Great. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our event today. My name is Kelsey Stewart from FabCafe Tokyo, and it is my great pleasure to be the host for tonight's event. So just to let you know, today we are joining the second of a series called Around the FabCafe World in 180 Days. In this event series, we invite leaders from the FabCafes around the world to introduce their FabCafe, tell us about their creative communities, and discuss the kind of challenges that they're having and the kind of topics that they're tackling in their local communities. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I would like to tell you just a little bit about FabCafe. So FabCafe is, on the one hand, a digital fabrication cafe. We're hosting workshops directly with creators. Sometimes we're doing hackathons. Sometimes we're doing meetups like today. On the other hand, it's also a creative community hub. So it's a place where people can come to meet, have a coffee, and hopefully have some creative serendipity along the way. So thank you so much for joining today. Moving right along. So in this event series, we are going around the world of FabCafe, and this is our second edition. So I'd just like to briefly introduce the edition which we just recently finished with FabCafe Bangkok. In this edition, we were introducing FabCafe Bangkok co-founder Kalaya Kovidvisit, who was telling us about her work in R&D and how at FabCafe Bangkok they can hack almost anything. If you're interested about what was discussed in that time, you can please scan this QR code. There's an English as well as a Japanese event report available. Please check it out. So the topic for today in particular, on the one hand, we're talking to David about the new FabCafe in Zamora, which is coming to be the third most aged city in Europe. So we're going to be talking about FabCafe Barcelona, as well as David's work in creating a new economy or a new social system in Zamora around the silver economy. We're also going to be bringing in Professor Rekimoto, who is well known for his concept called Yutakasa. And with this idea of richness, we're going to be considering the concept or the question of what does it mean to utilize technology for a heightened richness of life, and what does that richness mean? So I just want to go a little bit deeper into who our speakers are today. So the first speaker is going to be David Tenna Vicente, who is the CEO of FabCafe Barcelona. So David graduated from the University of Barcelona with his degree in physics, which has provided an extensive knowledge of mathematics, electronics, and the practical application of mechanics. Projects at FabCafe Barcelona are viewed analytically, adapting and altering when necessary due to complex and unexpected situations. These skills are combined to provide training to universities and businesses, and also guide David and his management of the resources and ongoing project at FabCafe Barcelona. Thank you so much for joining us today, David. Would you like to say hello?
Hello, thank you. Glad to be here.
Nice. How are things in Barcelona, all as well?
Yeah, very good. Today is the first sunny day of the week. It's been a couple of rainy days, but very good.
Cool. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be coming back to you shortly for the presentation. Next up, I would like to introduce Professor Jun Rekimoto. Professor Rekimoto is a professor at the Graduate School of Interdisciplinary Information Studies at the University of Tokyo. He is also the Deputy Director at the Sony Computer Science Laboratories, Inc. Short is Sony KSL. He completed his master's course at the Department of Computer Science, Faculty of Science at the Tokyo Institute of Technology in 1986. After working at NEC and the University of Alberta, he also worked at the Sony Computer Science Laboratories, Inc., or Sony CSL, from 1994. Since 2007, he has been a professor at the Graduate School of Interdisciplinary Information Studies at the University of Tokyo. And as mentioned, he is currently the Deputy Director at Sony CSL in Kyoto. We will promote research and social implementation of human augmentation as Sony CSL, which expands human capabilities with technology and the Internet of Abilities, which is a network development. Professor Rekimoto, are you here with us today? Would you like to say hello?
Hello, I'm Junichi Rekimoto, and now I'm joining from Kyoto. So I'm very happy to join this event.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Excellent. So today we are showing on YouTube Live, and I believe that there's a chat feature there. We hope to encourage a very friendly and casual discussion today, even though the discussion can be quite deep. So please feel free to say hello in the chat, ask some questions, get to know each other. We hope for this to be an enlightening and insightful event for everyone. And without further ado, I would now like to pass the baton to FabCafe CEO David Vicente for his presentation on FabCafe Barcelona and the up-and-coming FabCafe Zamora.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you.
So, first of all, welcome to Barcelona. So, Barcelona is the second largest city in Spain with more than 5.5 million people. And it's normally associated with the modernism architectural movement, by its parks, by having both mountains and beaches, by its museums, by its gastronomical delicacies. But today I'm going to speak about that, about the FabCafe there. So we opened the FabCafe Barcelona 8 years ago. And as all FabCafes, it has its cafeteria and its digital fabrication space, in which we get different kinds of profiles from designers and product designers, and a lot of students as well, and a lot of makers that are doing their projects and later become startups and they keep producing. And also we do a lot of courses, both in-house, in which we normally do workshops about digital fabrication or Arduino, IoT, or how to do product recycling materials, etc. And in university, in which I specifically teach at the University of Barcelona, at Polytechnical University of Barcelona as well, at the Elisava Design School, and on a few others. We also do a lot of, we put a lot of weight on doing productions of sustainable materials. In here we have an example of a side mirror of a car, in which is made out of coffee grounds, for example, in which we get from the cafeteria after being the coffee served. We keep them, we dry them, and then we do pieces with it to try to do projects within circular economy. FabCafe is located in the center of Barcelona, in Bailén Street, which is close to the Arc de Triomphe, and it's in the building and it's part of a co-working space called Makers of Barcelona, in which the one in which we're at, because Makers of Barcelona has 2 spaces in the city, can hold up to 200 people. And they are different startups from tech companies, designers, ITs. There's some even projects for the development of different kinds of projects. But today we're going to talk about something different, which is the rural side of Spain. Maybe most of you don't know that 87% of the surface of Spain is unpopulated. This is because younger people tend to go to the bigger cities to look for better job opportunities or to go study. And this results in a lot of its rural areas to be gradually abandoned or being very low populated. And this is also something that happens in not only Spain, but all in Europe. And specifically today, we're going to talk about a specific city, which is called Zamora, which is the city that we are seeing here. Because we have an opportunity to do something to help in this situation. So first, I'm going to introduce a little bit on what's happening there. So Zamora is having a decline in population in the past years. As you can see, it's very rapidly going down. And also not only in the whole province and the main city, which is also called Zamora, but also in terms of people living in municipalities that are ranging from 500 to 1,000 people. They are gradually being unpopulated and also even disappearing. There's a lot of what we call ghost towns here in the rural areas of Spain. So also we are seeing that in Zamora, the population is getting gradually older. From 2011, we can see that a major part of its population was ranging from the 40s to the 50s. And it was more or less balanced how many young people and 60 plus people there was in the city. And in 2019, we can see that there's less younger people and that there's more people from the 50 plus and 60 plus years old. And also there's compared to 2011, there's a lot of more people in the 70s and the 80s. So summing this part up, basically people, towns in the rural areas of Spain are being abandoned or being very low population, and the people who do stay in these towns and these cities are normally elderly people who do not want to leave the towns in which they've lived the whole lives. Also, their younger relatives, they have probably left for bigger cities to find better job opportunities or to study. And we see that even some critical jobs like the elderly care centers are lacking enough young people to work there for all the demand of elderly people that are using these resources or these spaces to live there. And the young people who do stay are normally working in health or assistential roles for the elderly, apart from the typical like grocery store or some minimum primary necessities. And then this brings us to the concept of what is called silver economy. Silver economy is a concept that is being pushed a lot in the whole Europe, because this tendency of populations getting older is something that's happening not only in Spain but in the whole Europe, as well as I know that it's happening in Japan. And this silver economy is basically the intent of creating new services and products aiming to have as a user people over 50 years old. Because Europe has calculated that by 2060, 1 every 3 people are going to be over 65 years old. And this is going to have implications both economically and in employment, etc. Services, examples of services that can be silver economy could be from IoT and domotics for the elderly, or e-health solutions, etc. So we had the opportunity. We talked to the deputation, which is the organ that the government organ that controls the Zamora province, and we decided that we were going to open a FabCafe in what will be their technological park in the city. So this still to be inaugurated. We will be the first to get installed there, and we will work together to get new startups or even like established companies to go there to Zamora to develop silver economy projects, so that younger people who are still living there, studying in the university in the near area, can stay in the city to work in tech projects. And in this way, we want to avoid that the younger people go so rapidly to the big cities, and also while also doing products that help the elderly who are living alone or living in elderly care centers. From this collaboration, we've also agreed that in the 28th of November, we're going to do a conference, how is it called? Like an exhibition of companies that work in technology projects for the elderly locally there in Zamora, which can be also assisted by the companies that want to do talks digitally, either in presential or digitally there. So FabCafe Zamora is going to lead some different projects. One of them, for example, is the fact that a lot of towns in the rural area near Zamora does not even have cell coverage. We want to connect them not only to the phone, cell phone lines, but also we want to make them able to connect to the internet. We want to make projects that work IoT and do gadgets for the betterment of their life quality at home. We want to do projects that make synergies with the already established first sector, like agriculture, that's very well established there. We want to help get a better mobility there, because one of the facts why people leave is because maybe it's difficult if they live in a town which is not Zamora city to move around between towns or go to the Zamora city. We want to establish, because it's our specialty, a digital fabrication network. And we want to do a robotics solution to help take care of the elderly, which is one of the topics that we wanted to bring up today. Right now, we have two options. We are collaborating with two companies, and we are developing prototype following two lines. One line is the bigger robots, which is more humanoid. Maybe it's more costly. We're talking about the one you can see on the left, that each unit is in the price range of 15,000 euros. This makes it not accessible for every elderly at home, of course. This is maybe more oriented for elderly care centers. But while having these human points makes it potentially capable of helping, for example, people get up from bed or get up from chairs, and this kinds of extra way of assisting. We've also find that for some elderly people, they find it intimidating to be in this shape, for example. And we have its counterpart, which is the smaller robots, which is, we have this model which has been tested in Barcelona, which is 10 times more affordable and thus being more accessible for the elderly at home, and can be programmed to interact with an established domotics at home, for example, and it's incorporated some sensors to, for example, measure temperature of the body temperature, can detect falls, etc. It can be upgraded, but being small, it will always have its limitations. For example, it will not see someone who's, for example, on top of the bed, or it cannot help anyone get up from the bed or get up from the chair, etc. But on the other hand, it's being smaller. The way they emphasize with the user with the robots is different from the other one, which they also like emphasize with that one, because there's like a relationship being developed when they've been like doing physical exercises with it, or they're being doing mental activities with it. They naturally get esteem for the robot. And the smaller one, for example, is more a relationship of also taking care of the smaller robot, and the robot taking care of you. So it's a different relationship with the two robots, and it's a different dynamic, but in which both of them are being developed. So because we cannot start both projects at the same time, we have to choose a way, a philosophy behind which robot we decide to go to develop first. We bring this topic up today to see if we get more information, more feedback to see what you all think about. And this is it for my initial presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, David. And I want to make sure that we keep that question in mind for the crosstalk as well, because I think that that's a question that you really want to get some insight about, how to make these kind of decisions or negotiate how to, tackle this challenge of, do you choose the larger robot, which might have some more capabilities in terms of lifting, for example, or do you go more towards the smaller robot, which might have a softer appeal, or maybe some more interesting communication, how should I say, like aspects? Yeah. Great. Thank you so much for your presentation. So next, I would like to invite Professor Rekimoto to join us and give us a presentation. Hello, thank you so much.
Hello. Okay,
right.
so I'd like to briefly talk about Sony CSL Kyoto and why Sony Computer Science Laboratory will have a new laboratory in Kyoto. So actually, the Sony CSL Kyoto is the third laboratory of Sony Computer Science Laboratory. The first one in Tokyo in 1988, and the second is Paris, and the third is Kyoto. And so we want to, the top level goal of this laboratory is pursuing the yutakasa, which is Japanese. And I think the richness means richness, awareness, richness or in English, but I think it's not exactly just the concept of the money or physical resource, but more on the, I think, the quality of life or spiritual highness of our life. So we also interested in how to balance between the local and global. So we are living in a very globally connected and or virtual space, or we can collaborate by using telepresence technologies. However, but we also living in a physical world, physical space. So I want to respect both sides of the virtual or the global, the electronic community, and also the local and the physical community. And I want to make how to balance between them. So maybe I want to ask one question. So of Yutakasa richness. Do you know which prefecture is richest in Japan? Do you have any guess? So actually in Japan, we have 47 prefectures. Of course, Tokyo or Osaka, or of course, Kyoto is one of the prefectures. Which one is the richest? So I think in this picture, actually, this is Tokyo, but I think that the answer is not Tokyo. The first one is Mie-ken. I think it's not what you expect. And the second is not Tokyo, the second Toyama. So, and actually Kyoto is the 23rd, something in the middle. And surprisingly, the Tokyo is 47, is the lowest. The Tokyo is lowest or most the ranking in this richest. So what do I mean is of course, the disposable income. So the average income in Tokyo is quite high, but not top, but the third in Japan. Because we have in Tokyo that there are a lot of rich people, so the average of income goes high because of this the small number of rich, very rich people. But if you talk about the median of income, so this goes to the 12th. And also the Tokyo is a quite high living cost. So renting cost is quite high. So the income minus living cost goes to 47. And also the Tokyo, you must spend a lot of time for commuting. And if you count commuting as a cost, so then the total the richness ranking goes to the lowest. So that means that in Japan, even to the too much concentration of the Tokyo, it's one city, is not I think a good goal for richness. So I think the Yutakasa is Japanese word, and maybe the corresponding English is wealth or riches, abundance. But this is very hard to translate in Japanese English. But this is the one phrase from Genji Monogatari, the Tale of Genji. This is I think the oldest novel in the world in Japanese, and it says that the one who though he be high, yet shall be loose with great is behind. I don't know if this is the correct the translation. I think machine translated, but this means that even though you are very rich, but you are not spiritually not high, so it's not good, maybe. So the Yutakasa itself does not always about just money or just material. And also I want to introduce two very famous researchers. The one is Mark Weiser. He is the researcher at the Xerox Parallel Research Laboratory in Silicon Valley. And he was known as the father of ubiquitous computing. But he also thinks that you mean the ubiquitous computing, there's computing everywhere. So it's very, I think, very busy world. So the computers always on, and also the sensors always on. It's not just reach. So later he changed the name of ubiquitous computing to the calm computing. So the technology must be calm or must be go background to support our life. So this is very important concept proposed by Mark Weiser. And I think very interesting coincidence between another researcher of Kyoto University, so Kyoto anthropologist, his name is Tadao Umesaro, and he also says a quite similar word. So this is in Japanese, this is the chitsujo to shizukesa. It's a kind of order and tranquility. Obviously, is the ultimate goal for technology. So I think these two professors, I think doesn't know each other, but both said a quite similar thing. So we want to combine like a laboratory just can support life and culture science technology and that support the yuta kasa. So actually, this is the location of Sony Computer Science Laboratory. This is a picture of Kyoto about 500 years ago. And you may see that this is do you know my cursor? So this is the Gion Matsuri Naginata Boko. This is a float of the Gion Festival. And this is surprising, but the exact same float is just going around even today. And so this Sony CSL Kyoto is located around here, and the FabCafe Kyoto is actually located around here. So they're quite close. So this is the map of 500 years ago. But now, still in these days, the Kyoto has a very similar road and city situations. So this is inside of Sony CSL Kyoto. So like it's kind of like a FabCafe. So we have an open space and the fabrication space and maybe kitchen for the food science. Or we even have a tatami room, the telepresence system. So like this one, and also like this. And so this is kind of telepresence facility in tatami room, meeting room. So maybe we can show something. So this is Kyoto, and we're going to the Sony CSL Kyoto, like this one. Here is CSL Kyoto. So we're going to the inside of the building. So we may have this kind of meeting space. And also we can use a telepresence technology or 3D reconstruction technology to jump into the remote place. So this is maybe the reconstructed version of Sony CSL Kyoto, so you can jack into this space. So we think that this kind of technology of the computer networks, so virtual space or maybe metaverse, that we can connect the remote place regardless of the physical location. But I think this is the one side of our next version of the future. So just connecting this space is good, but if you talk about something we cannot share in virtual, so this is the one of restaurant. So this is the Japanese food. So this kind of physical resource cannot be easily shared by the networks. Even that, I think the far future of the Fab Cafe, you can fabricate any food in any location. But at this moment, I think I want to respect both sides of virtual and both sides of physical. So maybe just I think that we can unbundle the cyber and physical and maybe virtual physical, and we can reconstruct the value of virtual and physical. So this is, I think, the goal of Sony Computer Science Laboratory, Kyoto. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that presentation. In particular, in the end, whenever you're talking about how to break down this kind of physical or virtual world, I think it really brings together a lot of your points together. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
So I would now like to move towards the crosstalk section of our event today. I've been taking some notes, particularly about FabCafe Barcelona or Sony CSL, these kind of definitions of richness. I really enjoyed this quote from Taylor Genji as well, and I hope to maybe contribute to a better translation for this, but I think that in general, the concept itself is very enlightening for our discussion today. So from now, for about 30 minutes, I would like to dive into a talk session based on the topic of how to design well-being with technology. And the first question I'd like to ask, just very briefly, is, David and June, or Professor Rekimoto, do you have any particular question about each other's presentations, or do you have any comment to make about, what you've been, hearing from each other up until now? Maybe we can start.
Yeah, so that,
with you.
can I ask, so the Fab Cafe have create the many city laboratories. So Fab Cafe Tokyo, Kyoto, and Barcelona. So do you feel there's some difference of the city by city, or I think what is common and what is not common for the city by city of each pub cafe?
Yeah, I think that there's some common things between all the spaces. We all have the cafeteria and the basic digital fabrication required for someone to call it for something to call it digital fabrication lab, like 3D printers, laser cutters, etc. But I think that every single Fab Cafe has its own like flair, maybe I would say it, or maybe something that makes it unique. For example, here in Barcelona, we are more focused on the how to say the recycling of materials, the circularity of projects. Maybe we've been focused at it for at least 4 or 5 years. And for example, when I try to think on projects made like handmade woodworking, etc., the Fab Cafe that comes to mind, for example. And I think that this Fab Cafe Zamora will not be as the Fab Cafe Barcelona in sense of this circularity aimed at the recycling specifically, but more in the works of the third age project that we're doing. And I found it curious on your presentation that here in Spain we are also like linking the wealth with the well-being more than riches. It's something that for example, when we've done some events in which people from all over Europe have come, that they come up that here in Spain we tend to relate more into the well-being more than to the economical wealth. Because I found it interesting that you do it similarly.
Nice. Actually, that's a really great way to transition to the next question as well. So my next question, and this is for both of you, I think that Professor Rekimoto has, given us a little bit of hints, in particular, talking about how Sony CSL is kind of pivoting themselves as the kind of laboratory that's focusing on this concept in particular. But, I also want to hear from David, you're talking about this kind of potential cultural difference, for instance. The second question is, how do you define the concept of yutakasa or richness? And then, if you want to open up the discussion a little bit more, what would be the kind of the good life? Now, of course, this depends on the people that we're talking about. Like, are we talking about the elderly population in Zamora? Are we talking about salarymen in Tokyo? So I'm sure that there's some diversity and variety here to be explored, but just to kind of open the discussion, how do you define this concept of richness? I'd like to first ask Professor Rekimoto.
So as I told about in my presentation, so the yutakasa is not just mean the richness or the money or physical resource. So I think it's the ability to select the lifestyle or ability to challenge or opportunity or situation that you can want to do something, and then you can do something. So this is, I think, the satisfaction. So this calls yutakasa.
Excellent. That's especially interesting to me in the context of an elderly population, considering I think one of the most common challenges is maybe the elderly person doesn't feel like they have some great task to do. For example, maybe their children have grown older or they're not working at their normal job anymore. So perhaps they've lost a kind of a vision or mission in life. So yeah, that's really good point. David, would you like to add on?
Yeah, I think that, well, in terms of what's life, I think that I also think it's very intertwined with health, in health in terms not only physically but mostly mentally. And when talking about tech projects, for example, I think that it's very important for something to be cross-generation, so that if you do something, new technology application that's going to be used by everyone, both silver economy and etc., that is not invasive, maybe I would say it, or stressful for the user when he's using it, or that is so that you depend on it so much that when you do not have it, you become stressed, for example, or it makes you like, or invasive in the terms of, like smartwatches in which you are constantly connected to. Maybe I would say that it connects more to a more natural. It should complement. Maybe it's it's what I maybe define it as. Technology developed for the richness of life. Maybe I would define it as something this way that is not invasive, maybe, and not stressful.
Now, the word that you mentioned, which kind of like comes to me as a keyword, is intergenerational. So whenever we're considering, these kind of solutions or interventions to deploy or consider, not only for elderly population, but for any population, there's this whole wide web of stakeholders involved in this. And especially in the case of FabCafe Zamora, it's also a kind of local revitalization project. So how do you create this appeal, this kind of like a richness, right, for the middle-aged or young people to come there and live their lives? So yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. So I think that we could talk about this question for quite a long time, but with the time restraints that we have for today, I'd like to go ahead and go to question number 3. So from your experience, how do you think technology can empower or create a sense of well-being for community members? So I think that both of you have a very long history of experience with these kind of technology solutions. And so I'm just wondering if you have any particular stories that you'd like to tell from your own perspective, or maybe stories from some members of your community in relation to how can technology empower, or how can technology create a sense of well-being? First, I'd like to direct the question to David.
Well, I think that one of the ways technologies can empower for the community members is actually connecting these members. Because, for example, for families living in the same city may not be so much of an issue to come see someone, but during the pandemic, for example, there's elderly people who have lived alone in their communities in the rural area. Maybe they were disconnected from their families, and they've been they may have even felt lonely or alone during this time. And it's something that for me, who I live in the city, is something that and I'm connected to. I go out the street and I'm still connected to the internet. I don't even have to use the phone coverage. I'm still on the internet. It's something that makes you see that it's even in Spain, it's not equal in all the territory, for example. And this also makes the possibility of other technologies to get from telemedicine or teleassistance, etc. So if you have a town with only 50 people in rural Spain, in which the closest hospital is kilometers and kilometers away, connecting these people to know if they, for example, have an emergency, or to judge if there's more than one emergency, how to prioritize, etc. If you are not communicated, etc., I think that the first thing that technology has to do is to empower the community connection itself, I think.
I think it's really interesting the way that you're describing this importance of connectivity, because it's not just connectivity for a kind of like social purpose, for example, creating an opportunity for people to have fun together or see each other's faces, but it kind of tackles each of the levels of the kind of Maslow's pyramid. It's about health as well, having access to basic health care, especially for people who might not have family members nearby anymore. This is incredibly important to provide that sense of safety or security, especially if they want to live by themselves. Great. Professor Rekimoto, would you like to add on to this discussion?
Yes, I completely agree with the connectivity is very important aspect of technology, what the technology can bring us. So I am researching the human augmentation, so the technology that can augment humans. But in this case, I think the cyborg is one particular example of human augmentation. So that maybe we can have a robotic the arm or something. So this I think was the individual augmentation. But I think what is more important is the network augmentation. So my ability can be connected other person's ability, or maybe other robot ability or AI's ability. So all the abilities can be connected and by using network. And also human augmentation is much easier in the network age because we are communicating in English. So it's not my natural language. So, but having the transcription or the machine translation between the Zoom or TV conference is much easier than in the real world. So we are very close to the AI can be very transparently expand our ability, especially in the network age.
Totally in agreement. And I think that it goes without saying that especially in the past 2 years with the onset of the corona pandemic, there are so many industries, so many fields which have just kind of, how do you say, like rocketed forwards in terms of innovation. And in particular now, Zoom is a kind of household name. Everybody knows what this means now, to be able to go online and communicate with people around the world. So I think that you're hitting the nail on the head about this. And in relation to human augmentation, actually there's a comment in the YouTube live saying that maybe yuta ka sa is about prosperity, a life of plenty, or a fruitful life. And when I think about the elderly population in Zamora, perhaps some of them, as David mentioned, have some issues with mobility. And so if they have this access to human augmentation, perhaps it can give them a new view on life, a new goal in life, a new way to find fulfillment and create some new fruits in their life as well. So thank you very much for your comment. Excellent. And if at any time there's something that you'd like to show on the screen to better demonstrate your point, I'm always happy to take down my screen share and you can show more illustratively on the screen as well. Great. So moving on to question 4. So we've discussed a little bit about the positive sides that technology can bring to us, so kind of like positive effects. And I think that we could discuss that for a long time, but there's also some risks and there's some challenges. For example, David mentions that if you have the large robot, perhaps it could still be quite intimidating to someone who doesn't have regular access to internet, for example. So the question I'd like to ask now is, what are the challenges or risks to consider when deploying technology to increase well-being? I'd like to start first with Professor Rekimoto.
So I said that the balance between the virtual and the physical is quite important. But now, so we are too much using Zoom, and as I aware that I just sitting in front of desk and just joining the Zoom and without actually moving my body. So this is not so good. So I think that just walking around, physically walking around is quite important. So this kind of what part of the physicality is important and what part of the physicality can be transferred to the virtual is a very important issue.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Recently, I'm also doing a lot of work from home. And not only do I miss, the physical aspect of seeing my coworkers, but yeah, I sit a lot. I'm at my desk a lot. And, I'd love to consider some of the kind of like ways that we can challenge the assumption that we need to be sitting when we're on Zoom, or we need to be in front of a computer when we're on Zoom. David, would you like to add anything to this?
Yes, I think that maybe one of the challenges of deploying the technology is that sometimes technology is so far ahead that the user does not completely understand it. And then if they don't completely understand it, they don't completely trust it. So, and I remember when lately a few months back, it was the Mobile World Congress here in Barcelona, and there was a startup who was in the AI section of the startups that all worked in AI, which their focus was not on developing the AI. The focus was on translating into human, into like saying, why did the AI choose that? And try to explain to the user if they're using whatever other AI, which because they do not develop AI, they said, no, I'm going to get all of that data and I'm going to explain it to you automatically somehow so that you can understand it, so they can trust it. And I think that one of the challenges is that sometimes we go so, we develop so quickly that for some users it's hard to keep on, to keep up, to understand exactly what's going to use. And the more invasive maybe the technology is in terms of it's always there, maybe, and another example in terms of IoT, there's some elderly in which we have given interviews in Zamora, which will never have a camera at home, not even if it doesn't record, or even if it's just a temperature sensor or something. Any sensor of any kind, even if it's not a camera, they will mistrust it because they do not actually completely understand, so they do not trust it. And then that's something that is also relevant, I think, it's a challenge in deploying technology.
No, I totally in agreement. Yeah, I'm wondering, Japan is also quite well known for being an increasingly aging society. Japan is also known for, robotics or this kind of soft, cool Japan side. So I'm wondering, Professor Rekimoto, in relation to this idea about, how to make people feel more safe or trusting of technology to increase their well-being, do you have any ideas about how to tackle this challenge, or have you ever seen a similar case in Japan before?
So decreasing the population is, I think, the most serious problem in Japan. So we are, I think, losing lot of population every day.
Oh,
yeah. So now that we are going to the shrinking society, as in the many the advanced nations. But one possibility is that we still have a lot of the possibility of connecting the abilities. So even though they're retired person, but who can physically they're retired, but who can still have an ability to teach somebody remotely. So the connecting the ability is one of the solution for tackle this problem.
Oh. It's a really interesting concept because it also kind of gives the user of the technology a new motivation to use it as well, because maybe they want to teach something that they're professional of, for example. Nice. What do you think, David? Do you think that there might be some people in Zamora who would want to connect to technology and maybe teach something to people in Japan or vice versa?
Yes, actually, it's come to our minds that one of the possibilities, because Zamora is so close to Portugal, it's a 30-minute drive, that elderly people in Zamora could teach Portuguese to Portuguese people through the internet, and that in exchange, elderly people in Portugal could teach Spanish. Sorry, could teach Spanish to Portugal, and the elderly in Portugal could teach back Portuguese as a first step on getting them to use the internet, for example, platform on technology to actually teach. Yeah, it's something interesting that has come up a few times. Yeah.
Nice. Great. I'm going to go ahead and skip on to question 5. And this question is for both of you. Looking to the future, are there any trends or hints that you see in the world of technology and well-being that could be interesting for FabCafe Zamora? So I'll first pitch the question to Professor Rekimoto, and then maybe we can hear the feedback from David and see if there's any other ideas which are floating around besides the cross-language teaching idea.
So I say that I think the food is one of the difficult part of that we cannot transfer over the internet. But still, a lot of research is tackling how to transfer taste or how to create a food fabrication. So this is a very interesting trend. So maybe we can connect the Tokyo and Barcelona, and we can transfer the Kyoto food to the Barcelona, and then we can receive the food from Barcelona to Tokyo or Tokyo, Kyoto. That would be very fantastic, very challenging. So I think maybe the Fab Cafe in 2050 or something around. The food fabrication is, I think, very most important part of Fab Cafe. So it's real Fab Cafe.
Yeah, it's curious that you bring that up because with the co-founder of FabCafe Barcelona, which is called Cecilia, we've worked a project in which is actually a taste simulator and which is still very, very early in development. But one of the flavors that we've nailed is soja sauce. So it's one of the things that we actually, when we wanted someone to build that, we managed it. So everything else is still being worked on. But that one is, yeah, we want to make someone from through electrical discharges on your tongue make you feel something. We managed to make you feel that. No, but it's very interesting because I think that one of the opportunities of Zamora, because Zamora is very well known in Spain, for example, for its agriculture and its stock, livestock, etc., in very good quality product. But sometimes it's like it's very very consumed locally or directly by other big companies that live directly abroad. But it's for the person who's actually the farmer that's living there, they basically sell locally because they do not know how to do it otherwise. And technology could help them to get it maybe better sales, not to lose so much to the distributor if they actually found a way of using technology to get it further away from just the next town next to them, for example. So yeah, it's an interesting point.
Nice. As a side question, I'm wondering if either of you have ever eaten something that was derived with using digital fabrication. Have you had that experience before?
I have. I've tasted synthetic meat done with a 3D printer. Yeah.
With 3D printers, synthetic meat. How about
you,
Professor Rekimoto?
I also experienced synthetic meat.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
How was it?
So nice.
The one I tasted this year in Mobile Congress was much better actually than the last time I tasted it. I think it's getting better. But yeah, first time so as well.
Yeah, I can just say that. True. Yeah, it wasn't created by digital fabrication, but when I was visiting my family at home in US, I had the opportunity to try the Impossible Burger. And yeah, I was quite shocked at how far they've come with that technology. So I look forward to seeing whenever that becomes more commonplace for everyone. So at this point, I'd like to go ahead and go on to question 6. And then there's also one more question from the audience, which we can address after this. But as a kind of call to action, and this is for David, but of course, Professor Rekimoto, like if you have some suggestions, I'd love to hear them. So what kind of collaborators, David, are you seeking to help you build this community and silver economy ecosystem?
Well, there's actually different kinds of collaborators that we're seeking. Of course, we want people to go physically there to set up new companies or new branches of their companies because they have like different benefits from being everything lower cost from land to cost of living and being a more calm life, not so stressful as the cities, etc. But we also seek collaborators from even abroad that do not actually have to come here physically, just because they're working on a similar problems and they want to, from just exchanging data to actually working on something together. It's something that we think that we can really benefit from tiny differences or differences from just testing things elsewhere. I think we can all learn from seeing those differences, how they play out.
Thank you. What do you think, Professor Rekimoto? Is there a particular type of collaborator or area of industry or even area of academic field that you think would be interesting to install in this journey?
So I think Kyoto is known as a city of craft or traditional, very good craft. So I think lot of very, very the high level craft person there. But I think unfortunately they are not so fluent in English or international language. So now that we can maybe connect by the Zoom and automatic AI translation that can support. So that we can connect more and more the local the person who is quite good and to the world.
Nice. So maybe it's not, so far-fetched to believe that we can, start actually bringing people who are not even physically there to that space to provide new value and well-being for the population in Zamora as well. Excellent. So I just have two more small questions. One is from the audience who mentions it's a kind of challenge derived from an IT perspective. So it may be a challenge for professional workers, for example, care and medical professionals, to constantly update their knowledge on how to use each new device. David or Professor Rekimoto, do you have any ideas about how to, keep, for example, healthcare professionals up to date with this kind of new technology, for example, installing a robot or other IoT solution? What do you guys think?
Well, from what we've seen here in Spain, there's already like a role being created in a lot of these assistential companies in which they are in charge of making sure that everyone knows the tools they're using, technologically speaking. So if there's a change of platform, which it happens, or maybe now we are using this old database, we are going to this new database, etc. And if you have maybe 50 or 60 people like doing assistance at homes, at the private homes, and you change them from their phone application, you change to another one. I see that there's already like a figure that they're in charge of making sure that everyone knows how to use it, and if they don't, they help them use it, or like keep track that everyone's using correctly the application. So I've seen this. But yes, it's actually being more formalized because it's an issue. It's something that maybe for someone who is helping people get up from bed or cook them and then doing the chores from home and then go to another home, maybe they don't have to be versed in how to use certain application, for example. So because of technology being a tool that it's being implemented in the whole company, there has to be a way of making sure that they learn, even if it takes longer or shorter for some people.
What do you think, Professor Rekimoto, for the people who are not so versed in technology or IT solutions, how would you suggest to help them to become constantly updated on this knowledge?
So I myself has a difficulty for catching up all the latest technologies. But I think there's no need for follow all the technologies. So some technology arrives, so maybe that looks new, but even though these technologies not so quite useful, so they go away naturally. So you don't have to try to catch up everything. Just wait, and technologies approach for you.
I think that you're hitting the nail on the head with that. It makes total sense. And, I don't think that people 30 years ago would think that we're carrying a small computer in our pocket every day either. So, it just goes to say that if there's a need, people will learn how to use it. And actually, this kind of decision making, it kind of brings me back to the question. It seems like a simple question, but I don't think it's so simple. For example, David was mentioning earlier, do we go with the big robot or the little robot? Do we go with the intimidating one or the one that can't lift the person themselves? And I just want to ask Professor Rekimoto, what do you think? Big robot, little robot? How do we make this decision?
Which robot? So
David had presented earlier, there's so many decisions to be made in terms of what IoT solutions to be using in FabCafe Zamora. And in particular, maybe David can actually hash it out a little bit more, but which one would you go with in this case, like the larger robot for physical capacity or a smaller one for ease?
So my preference is the regardless of the size that I want to program or I want to control the robot. So I want to program it. So this is my personal preference. So I want to make something by using these robots.
Yeah. I think that, yeah, in terms of empowering the users themselves too, they probably also want to use the robot to make something as well. So that's a good point. Nice. So without further ado, I believe that our time is up. It's exactly 8 p.m. So I just want to let everyone in the audience know that there's an opportunity to connect with us after this event. If you'd like to scan this QR code, you can take a survey with us today to let us know what you think or ask additional questions. We're interested to connect with everybody who joined with us today. David and Professor Rekimoto, thank you so much for joining us for this super fruitful discussion on technology and well-being. Do you have any final comments before we let you go?
Okay.
No, first, please. Well, I think that there's some very interesting topics that have been raised, and that makes us, and it's going to be useful for me to contemplate when I have to do some choice making in the future. And I'm super glad to have had Professor Rekimoto here to help us to make us see this concept of richness in life. I think it's very interesting.
Nice.
So I just want to say that I want to visit Barcelona again.
Oh, you're always invited.
I hope that.
Yeah. Yes. Let me know if you come. I'll do you a tour of the city.
Excellent. At the very least, maybe we can use digital fabrication to send each other's food to each other in the near future.
Yeah.
Great. So thank you so much for today's event. The last thing I would like to do before we wrap up is I would like to ask David, today we were going around the FabCafe world with FabCafe Barcelona and the future FabCafe Zamora. Who would you like to pass the baton to for the next volume in this series?
Yes, I very happily want to pass the baton to Tim in Taipei.
Nice, excellent. Thank you so much. So you heard it here now. Tim Wong, we're coming to FabCafe Taipei, and we look forward to having an event with you next. Great. So thank you everyone so much for joining us today. This has been a really great conversation, and I'm so happy to have been able to invite both of you for this event. Again, if anybody is interested in connecting us later on, please scan the code or send us an email, check us online. And yeah, much appreciated for all of your very, very fruitful and rich discussion. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.